previous video, I showed you how to set up MAMP Pro and WordPress so that way you could run WordPress locally on your computer. Now what I want to do is show you how to move it off of your computer so you can actually put it up online somewhere with the host of your choice, whether that's GoDaddy, Media Temple, Bluehost. There's a whole bunch of great web hosting companies out there. So what I want to show you now is how to export your WordPress files and then export the database, so you basically have the keys to move this wherever you need to move it. So for right now, what we've done is we've set up a local WordPress build. I've got my WordPress files here in this adobe_com folder. So this is basically just a fresh install of WordPress with my WordPress content and themes. And then right here is where that's being defined in MAMP, so on my desktop under adobe.com or adobe_com. And then the server name we had as adobe.com, again, just showing you that you can make this whatever you want. And when your servers are running, when you launch that, it's going to fool your computer into loading what you've defined as the root folder instead of the actual adobe.com. So here's the fully functioning website that we have built on WordPress right now. So what I want to do is go ahead and save these files and export them. You would want to do this for a couple different reasons, either as a backup, just so you have it in case your site gets hacked or in case anything funny happens or you accidentally save over something. It's always good to have a backup, or in this case it's nice to know that you can move it anytime you need to, whether it's to move it somewhere else or to push it live. So what we're going to do is first we're going to copy all of the actual data files. So that would be this folder. For today's purposes, I'm going to pretend to copy it to a jump drive. So I could either hit Command-C to copy, Control-C on a PC, or just hit Alt or Option and drag that to my jump drive. By holding down Alt, it'll drag a copy. I get the little plus sign. If it was actually a thumb drive, it would just do that automatically. So now what I've got my files copied there, but I still need the database. The database is essentially the key to tell it how to work and what assets to pull in. So I'm going to click on this MySQL tab. I'm going to come down to PHP MyAdmin, and that's going to open your default web browser to show you what we've got going on here. So this is the Adobe _com database that I had made for that site. So if I click on this, I can see I've got all of the structure and all of the tables set up in here. So what I want to do is go ahead and hit export. And then if I click the quick display, which I don't want to do, but let's just say I did, it's going to show me the actual text version of the database. It's going to show me basically every line of code that's in here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go back, because what I really want is I want the actual file as an SQL file. So I'll hit custom, and I'll make sure I've got all of these selected, and I want to save this to a file. So I'll click that checkbox there. And then there's a couple options I want to point out to you. So we're going to do it both ways. The first way, I'm going to leave these unchecked under the object creation options. What this is going to make me do is when I re-import this, since I don't have add create database and add drop table, what drop table means is delete it if it's already there. What's going to happen is two things. I'm going to have to create a database when I bring it in to put it, and then also if there's already data in there, it's going to give me an error. If it'll basically say there's already here, and it'll cause problems. So just for the shortcut purposes, you'd probably want to do both of these, but again, I'm going to show you both ways. So I'll leave these unchecked right now, and then I'll hit go, and that's going to spit out an SQL file for me down here in my download stack. Okay, so those are the two keys I would need to bring that in, but again, because I want to show you both ways, we're going to do this again, but this time I'm going to click add create database and then add drop table. Okay, we'll hit go. So the second way is what I would do, just for future reference, and it's trying to erase that, so I'm going to say keep both because it spit them out as the exact same name. So I've got my adobe.com, this is the first one we did. This is the second one we did, so I'm going to hit return, and instead of calling it copy, I'm going to call this one -add, just to remind me that I had clicked this add create database. So what that's going to do, in fact, let's just go ahead and open this up in Coda so you can see it. Give it a second here. Okay, so that's the add version. So what it did is it added this line of code that says create database if it doesn't exist. So if this isn't in there, then go ahead and create that. Let's open up this guy and see what the difference is here. Okay, so you can see just by toggling that right here about line 20 in the code, 22, it created that. So that's the difference here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and close these. So now I basically have my keys and I've got all my files. So usually what I would do is just copy over my database. So I've got my database, I've got my WordPress files, and we're good to go. Again, we've got this extra one because I'm going to show you both ways. We'll close that. I'm going to come back over here to the host file. I'll go ahead and remove this. And I can click this delete document root folder as well. When I hit that, what it's going to do is delete the original root folder as well. So now I've basically wiped out my WordPress install. I'll come back over here to my MySQL tab, and you wouldn't have to do this normally. I'm just showing you, that if we erase this, how we can come back in with a fresh install. So I'll click on my Adobe_com database. Actually, what I want to do is click on this home folder up here. My bad. And then I'll click on databases. Then I'll click on this toggle right here next to my Adobe database. I'll scroll down and I'll hit drop. Again, what drop basically means is delete, right? So I'll hit OK. Yes, I want to drop the database. And now under this users tab, which again I'm under the root, the home folder of this phpMyAdmin area, I'll go to users. And I've got this Adobe user as well. So I'll click on that and I'm going to remove it. What this means, you can actually add the database with the same username at the same time. In this case, I had them as separate entities and I tied it together. But basically, same thing, we're going to delete it, okay? So had I tied them in together, it would actually also delete the database as well when I would delete this user. So I hit go, and yes, I want to drop that. So now I've removed my username and my database, so there's nothing in there, okay? Now we'll go ahead and close this, but let's just pretend we're coming in now, we're trying to do a fresh install or removing this thing, okay? So I'll come to my host file and I'll set this up again and I'll call it adobe.com. You're going to want to call this the same thing as it was before. If you're going to change the URL, we'll have to cover that in another video. But for today's purposes, let's just call it the same thing that it was before. Okay, I'm going to define my root again as, and this time it's actually in my jump drive. We'll choose that. Okay, and now I'll hit save. So we've given it the URL, we've told it where the files live, and now what I need to do is install the database. So I'll come over here to MySQL, we'll launch phpMyAdmin, and we're going to try this both ways. First, what I'm going to do is try it without having a database in here at all. What we'll do, actually, I take that back. We'll make a new one first. Okay, so we'll call this database Adobe No add, just so we know this is the one where I had to do it myself. Okay, so I've got a database, and now if I come to import, I can drag and drop this one right over my choose file and then hit go, and it's going to import that right into the database I just created. But I had to create that database. The alternative, let's say I was starting right here in the home menu and I try and click import and I drag and drop that one over and I hit go. It's going to have an error because it can't find that database. It can't find any database, right? So if I come back to the home, the alternative is this one that actually adds it for me. So I'll come back here to home, come back to import, drag and drop this database that had that add code in it. What it's going to do is it's going to add a new database here called Adobe_com, because that's what we told it to do. We told it to make a database if it didn't already exist. So there it is right there. Okay. So the next thing that we chose, if I drag it in there again, let's say we've already got this Adobe_com database in here, and I go to try and import a duplicate. If I try and click and drag and move this over, because I also toggled that drop database, that drop table if exists, what it's going to do is wipe out anything that's already in there and then add it again. Otherwise, we would have gotten an error here instead, and it would have said, hey, there's already files here, and it would have been a problem. So basically now I've got two databases here. They've essentially got the same thing going on. However, neither one of them have a user tied to this account. If I come to this home, come over to users, you can see that I don't have any Adobe users in here like I had before. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back over to my Adobe database. I'll come over here to privileges and then add user. Alternatively, you could come to the home icon and then click on users right here as well. Scroll to the bottom and we've got the add user button. Okay, so I'm going to create a new user. And I'm going to make this different than what my WordPress file was on purpose. So Adobe wrong user. And then this needs to be localhost for right now because we're on MAMP. I'm going to make my password. Okay. And that is obviously not a match. Sorry. Oh my goodness. There we go. I'm going to check all. So now basically I'm creating a user and I'm giving it all the privileges there. I'm going to hit go. And now I've got that Adobe wrong user here. Now the reason why I'm showing you that, okay, I've got my database and I've got my user. Now if I try and come back in here to my hosts file, I've got Adobe, I've got my folder, everything's looking good. Now if I try and see that website, it's going to have an error establishing a connection with the database. And the reason why is because I gave it the wrong username. But it'll work with whatever username I give it. I just need to tell it that I've changed it. So I'll come in here to my files and I'm going to come find the wp-config file, which is a default file in all WordPress installations. And I'm just going to open this with my text editor of choice, which is currently Coda, but you could open this in anything, whether it's text edit or whatever. So right here, my database name, adobe_com, that looks good. The Adobe username, or the database username, that's the one that I changed to Adobe_wrong user. I've got my password, localhost, it's all looking good. Now if I save this, close it, and then I try again and I open this up, fingers crossed we should see our website now brought back into MAMP. So hopefully that makes sense. A lot of great applications as far as backing it up or moving it. And now I'm off and running. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial, and good luck.